Remember when Saturday nights meant the whole family gathered round the telly, arguing over who'd win on the generation game? Those magical 80s game shows pulled in audiences that would make today's producers weep with envy. We're talking 20 million viewers for a single episode. But here's the shocking truth. Many of these shows were axed not because of ratings, but because television executives thought we'd grown too sophisticated for them. Yet decades later, we're still quoting Bruce Forsyth's catchphrases and secretly wishing we could have a go on that conveyor belt. The irony. These unsophisticated shows created television moments more memorable than anything we've seen since. The Generation Game wasn't just a game show, it was a national ritual that defined Saturday night television. The show's unique back and forth between hosts added to its charm. Larry Grayson took over from Bruce Forsyth in 1978, bringing his own "Shut That Door" catchphrase and camp humour until 1982. The show regularly commanded audiences of 15 to 20 million viewers, numbers that would be considered impossible today. The genius of the format lay in its simplicity. Family pairs competing in increasingly ridiculous challenges, from pottery making to pancake flipping, all building to that legendary conveyor belt finale. What most people don't realise is that the conveyor belt prizes were deliberately mundane. A cuddly toy, a fondue set, a teasmade, because producers discovered that viewers actually preferred watching contestants win ordinary items they might have in their own homes rather than luxury goods. The psychological brilliance was that everyone at home genuinely believed they could do better at remembering the items. Here's something fascinating. The conveyor belt moved at precisely 2.3 miles per hour, calculated as the optimal speed for television viewing. Too fast and viewers couldn't process the items. Too slow and it lost dramatic tension. The most remembered items, the cuddly toy and the teasmade, were strategically placed at the beginning and end, exploiting what psychologists call the primacy and recency effects. The show's 1982 hiatus came during a period of general variety show decline. But when Bruce returned in 1990, he proved the format still had life, though it never quite recaptured those extraordinary early 80s viewing figures. Coming up next, we'll reveal which beloved host completely changed careers to present their show, and the game show whose prizes became more famous than the actual game. Les Dennis might have become synonymous with family fortunes, but the show's journey through hosts tells a fascinating story of British television evolution. Bob Monkhouse launched it in 1980 with his trademark smooth professionalism. Then Max Bygraves brought his old-school variety charm from 1983 to 1985. When Les Dennis took over in 1987, he transformed it into something entirely different. More working class, more chaotic, and somehow more lovable. The show's format, imported from America's Family Feud, seemed foolproof. Survey 100 people, guess their answers. But what made the British version special was its spectacular capacity for awkward moments. Real documented answers that have passed into legend include "Name something red," "My cardigan," and "Name a dangerous race." The Arabs. These weren't setups. They were genuine moments of panic under studio lights. At its peak, the show pulled in 15 million viewers, making it one of ITV's most valuable properties. The buzzer sound became so iconic that British Telecom reported a spike in people trying to reproduce it on their touch-tone phones. The big money round, where families could win up to £3,000, was actually conceived as a way to keep production costs down. One big prize was cheaper than lots of small ones throughout the show. Higher or lower? 3 words that could unite or divide a nation. Bruce Forsyth's card game pulled in 13 to 15 million viewers who'd shout advice at their screens with religious fervour. The show's brilliance lay in its simplicity, but the production was surprisingly complex. The Dolly Dealers, those glamorous assistants who turned the cards, went through rigorous training. They had to turn cards at exactly the same speed every time to maintain consistency for editing. The dramatic pause before revealing each card was precisely timed at 3.5 seconds, tested as the optimal length to build tension without losing viewer attention. Bruce's famous "You don't get anything for a pair," not in this game, became so embedded in British culture that it appeared in parliamentary debates and wedding speeches. The catchphrase emerged organically during the first series when Bruce needed to clarify the rules after a confused contestant. The top prize of £4,000 was significant for its time, equivalent to about £15,000 today. But here's what made it clever. Unlike modern game shows with life-changing amounts, this was just enough to be exciting, but not so much that viewers felt disconnected from the contestants' experience. Cilla Black's Blind Date revolutionised Saturday night television when it launched in 1985, regularly attracting 12 to 14 million viewers. The show's format created a new television vocabulary: Our Graham, voiceover artist Graham Skidmore, the sliding screen reveal, and Cilla's Laura laughs became part of British culture. The selection process was incredibly thorough. Potential contestants went through 3 rounds of auditions, psychological assessments, and screen tests. Producers looked for specific personality types that would create entertaining television: the cheeky chappy, the posh girl, the nervous romantic. They weren't matching for love. They were casting for entertainment. Graham Skidmore's voiceover work was indeed recorded during the actual filming, allowing him to react to genuine moments. His perfectly timed quips became so popular that he received more fan mail than some of the contestants. The holiday destinations were chosen not for romance, but for their potential to create awkward situations. Skiing trips for people who'd never seen snow, sailing holidays for those who got seasick. The show ran until 2003, making it one of the longest-running game shows in British television history. Its influence extended beyond television. Dating agencies reported massive increases in business whenever the show aired, and the format was sold to 17 countries. Jim Bowen's Sunday afternoon darts quiz pulled in 12 million viewers with what critics called the worst prizes on television. And that was exactly the point. The show's genius was in embracing its working-class roots completely, never pretending to be something it wasn't. The prizes became legendary for their inappropriate matching to winners. The speedboat for contestants from Birmingham became such a famous example that it entered British comedy folklore, though in reality, most non-car prizes came with a cash alternative that was rarely mentioned on air. The ceramic bendy bully prizes, given to losing contestants, now sell for hundreds of pounds on eBay. More than many of the actual prizes were worth. Jim Bowen's presenting style divided critics but united audiences. A former deputy headmaster and comedian, Bowen brought an authenticity that couldn't be manufactured. His catchphrases, "super smashing, great, you can't beat a bit of bully," and "look at what you could have won," came naturally from his Lancashire club circuit background. Tony Green, the scorer, was actually a former referee and one of the voices of professional darts. His role was crucial. He kept the mathematics moving while Jim handled the entertainment. The professional darts players who appeared were genuinely competing, though the format meant they often had to carry amateur partners, leading to some spectacular defeats of champions by complete novices. The microphone that looked like a burglar's torch, the famously terrible prizes, and a host who seemed to be sharing a private joke with the audience, Blankety Blank drew 10 to 12 million viewers by celebrating its own cheapness. Terry Wogan hosted from 1979 to 1983, setting a tone of gentle mockery that Les Dawson amplified when he took over in 1984. The legendary Blankety Blank checkbook and pen became the most famous consolation prize in television history. Production documents reveal the original budget for prizes was actually reasonable, but producers deliberately chose to spend it on quantity rather than quality, buying hundreds of terrible prizes rather than a few good ones. This decision transformed the show from a conventional panel game into something subversive. The celebrity panel format created its own ecosystem. Regular panelists like Kenny Everett, Lorraine Chase, and Paul Daniels developed personas specifically for the show. The seating arrangement wasn't random. Producers placed celebrities based on their likelihood to give matching or conflicting answers, creating dramatic tension from seemingly innocent word association. Les Dawson's tenure from 1984 to 1990 saw him perfect the art of the resigned host, treating the whole enterprise with magnificent disdain while clearly loving every minute. His piano playing during breaks, deliberately hitting wrong notes with perfect timing, became as famous as the show itself. Leslie Crowther's enthusiastic "Come on down" became the battle cry of daytime television when the show launched in 1984, attracting over 10 million viewers. The British version adapted the American format but added distinctly British elements. Less hysteria, more embarrassment, and prizes that included tea sets alongside cars. The audience selection process appeared random but followed strict guidelines. Warm-up comedians identified enthusiastic but not overly aggressive participants, marking their seats for producers. The famous run down the stairs to contestants' row was rehearsed with stand-ins to ensure safety, after insurance companies raised concerns about the potential for accidents in the excitement. Pricing games were chosen specifically for British audiences. While Americans had their Plinko, Britain got the grocery game, where contestants had to price everyday shopping items, a format that resonated with a nation obsessed with getting bargains at Tesco. The Showcase Showdown prizes were deliberately mix and match. A car, a greenhouse, and a year's supply of tea was a typical combination. Leslie Crowther's energy was genuine. He was known for arriving at recordings hours early to personally greet audience members as they arrived. His enthusiasm came from a variety background where audience engagement was everything. The show ran until 1988 with brief revivals under different hosts, but none captured Crowther's particular brand of infectious excitement. Here's something fascinating. The next show we're exploring literally started a channel, while another tested contestants so rigorously that several ended up in hospital. Bob Holness's hexagonal quiz became essential viewing for students, attracting 8 to 10 million viewers at its 5:15 p.m. slot. The show made being clever cool for teenagers, quite an achievement in the 80s when academic success wasn't always celebrated in youth culture. The hexagonal board design came from educational psychology research. Hexagons create more strategic pathways than squares while remaining simple enough for viewers to follow. The original American version used a different format, but British producers discovered hexagons tested better with UK audiences who enjoyed the additional strategy element. The infamous "Can I have a pea please, Bob?" entered playground humour across Britain, though Bob Holness always handled it with perfect deadpan professionalism. Holness himself became an unlikely teen idol. He received more fan mail than many pop stars of the era. The myth that he played saxophone on Jerry Rafferty's Baker Street was actually started by radio DJ Stuart McConey as a joke, but Holness enjoyed the story so much he never corrected it, adding to his cool credentials. The student contestants were selected through a rigorous process involving written tests at their schools. Producers wanted genuinely clever kids, not just confident ones, leading to some brilliantly awkward television as brainy but shy teenagers struggled with studio conditions. The Gold Run prize, typically a personal computer or a modest amount of money, seems quaint now but was significant for 80s teenagers. When Channel 4 launched at 4:47 p.m. on November 2nd, 1982, Countdown was literally the first programme broadcast, and despite only attracting 4 to 5 million viewers initially, it created a cultural phenomenon that endures today. Richard Whiteley's jumpers and terrible jokes, combined with Carol Vorderman's mathematical brilliance, created an unexpectedly compelling partnership. The show's creator, Belgian media mogul Marcel Stelman, based it on the French show Des Chiffres et des Lettres. Nobody expected it to last beyond its initial 7-week run. The budget was so tight that the original clock was made from repurposed parts from other game shows, and that famous music was created for just £100. Carol Vorderman joined as a mathematics graduate doing work experience, earning £20 per show initially. Her ability to solve the numbers game in seconds was genuine. She'd developed her own system of mathematical shortcuts that she later turned into successful educational books. Richard Whiteley, meanwhile, cultivated his image as television's most unlikely host, turning his lack of traditional presenting skills into his unique selling point. Dictionary Corner became British television's most exclusive guest spot. The combination of serious lexicographers and random celebrities created surreal moments. Where else would you find a punk rocker discussing etymology with the editor of the Oxford English Dictionary? The show's appeal to students led to countdown clubs forming in universities, legitimizing daytime television viewing for intellectuals. Roy Walker's animated quiz show drew 8 to 9 million viewers from 1986, with Mr. Chips becoming one of the first CGI characters in British television history. The show's computer animation was revolutionary, costing £1,000 per second to produce at a time when entire episodes of other game shows cost less than a minute of catchphrase animation. The catchphrases themselves were meticulously tested. Writers would present dozens of options to focus groups, measuring not just whether people could solve them, but how long it took and how much satisfaction they felt when they did. The ideal catchphrase took between 15 and 30 seconds to solve, long enough to create tension, short enough to avoid frustration. Roy Walker brought a Northern Irish warmth that differentiated the show from slicker productions. His genuine frustration when contestants missed obvious answers wasn't scripted. He'd often need a break after particularly obtuse contestants spent 3 minutes failing to identify "a stitch in time saves 9" from an animation of a clock being sewn. The show's snake charmer music and Roy's "it's good but it's not right" became part of the national consciousness. The format proved so successful it's been revived multiple times, though purists insist the original 80s animation, despite being primitive by today's standards, had more charm than modern CGI versions. The British Wheel of Fortune, launching in 1988 with Nicky Campbell, attracted 8 million viewers to ITV. Unlike its American counterparts Glitz, the British version had a peculiarly understated feel. The wheel was smaller, the prizes more modest, and the host more likely to discuss the etymology of the puzzle solution than whoop with excitement. The wheel itself weighed half a ton and required special reinforcement of the studio floor. Each spin was completely random. Contrary to urban myths, there was no way to control where it landed. The clicking sound as it slowed was artificially amplified because test audiences found the natural sound insufficiently dramatic. Nicky Campbell brought an intellectual edge that distinguished the British version. A future Radio 5 live presenter, he'd often engage contestants in genuine conversation between spins, creating moments of real human connection amid the game show artifice. When John Leslie took over in 1989, the show became more energetic but lost some of its distinctly British charm. The letter-turners, including Angela Ekayet and Carol Smillie, who'd later become presenters themselves, were selected for their ability to maintain perfect posture while walking in heels on a polished floor. Harder than it looked. They trained for weeks to perfect the synchronized letter-turning that became the show's signature visual. Gordon Burns pushed contestants through mental and physical challenges that drew 7 to 8 million viewers to Granada Television's assault on human capability. The show's title came from Superman's home planet, suggesting contestants needed superhuman abilities to succeed. And watching the assault course, you'd believe it. The assault course at Hollingworth Lake became legendary. Built to military specifications, it was genuinely challenging. Contestants trained for weeks beforehand, and medical staff were always on standby. The course was rebuilt 3 times during the show's run, each time becoming more demanding as contestants got fitter. The water tank temperature was precisely regulated at 12 degrees Celsius, cold enough to be shocking, not so cold as to be dangerous. Intelligence tests were created by genuine psychologists and were so effective that several companies requested permission to use them for recruitment. The observation round used footage shot specifically for the show, with continuity errors deliberately introduced. Gordon Burns himself took all the tests before filming and consistently scored in the middle range. Producers felt this helped him empathise with struggling contestants. The flight simulator scenes used RAF equipment on loan from the Ministry of Defence. This caused controversy when it emerged that contestants were essentially receiving military-grade training at taxpayer expense, though the RAF argued it was good publicity for recruitment. Annika Rice's helicopter-hopping adventure captivated 7 million viewers with a format that seemed impossible. Live treasure hunting across the British Isles with studio-bound Kenneth Kendall directing the action. The show ran from 1982 to 1989 and revolutionised outside broadcast television. The logistics were staggering. Each episode required 2 helicopters, 1 filming, 1 backup, 3 ground crews, and coordination with air traffic control across multiple regions. The Civil Aviation Authority created special regulations just for Treasure Hunt. Insurance costs were astronomical. Lloyd's of London initially refused coverage until producers demonstrated their safety protocols. Annika's jumpsuit became iconic fashion, but it was chosen for practical reasons. It had 14 pockets for radio equipment, maps, and safety gear. She did all her own running, covering an average of 4 miles per episode. The physical demands were so intense she trained with athletics coaches between series. Kenneth Kendall in the studio was working with a 2-minute satellite delay, making his apparent conversations with Annika an elaborate piece of theatre. He was reading from carefully timed scripts while watching delayed footage, creating an illusion of real-time interaction that fooled most viewers. Michael Barrymore's energy transformed this American format into uniquely British chaos when it launched in 1986. 6 to 7 million viewers tuned in for Barrymore's physical comedy as much as the quiz element. The show made Barrymore a household name, though his larger-than-life persona would later become both his greatest asset and his downfall. The format was indeed adapted from the American Strike It Rich, but Barrymore made it his own through sheer force of personality. His interactions with contestants, often involving impromptu dancing or comedy routines, were unscripted. Producers learned to add extra recording time because Barrymore would regularly go off script for 10-minute improvised segments. The hotspots were positioned using a computer program that analysed contestant movement patterns. Researchers discovered most people naturally moved in predictable ways across the screen, so hotspots were placed accordingly. The moving screens were operated by stagehands who became expert at timing reveals for maximum dramatic effect. What is a hotspot not? Became a catchphrase, but Barrymore admitted he never understood why the question was phrased that way. The original format used positive phrasing, but British producers felt the negative construction was more memorable. Ted Rogers' variety game show ran from 1978 to 1988, consistently drawing 6 million viewers who'd watch contestants inexplicably reject cars in favour of dustbins. The show's combination of variety acts and incomprehensible clues created a unique form of television masochism. The cryptic clues were written by professional puzzle setters, including several who worked for the Times crossword. They were deliberately constructed to have multiple plausible interpretations, with the correct answer often being the least logical choice. Academic studies of the show concluded that random selection would have yielded better results than trying to solve the clues. Ted Rogers' hand gesture became so famous he had it insured for £10,000. The gesture was actually his own invention. Producers wanted him to point at the camera, but Rogers felt the hand signal was more distinctive. He was right, it became one of the most recognised gestures in British television. Dusty Bin, the booby prize mascot, was created by Clive Doig and became more famous than most of the celebrity guests. The original Dusty was stolen from the studio in 1984, leading to a nationwide police hunt. He was found in a skip in Manchester, appropriately enough. The metal bin with eyes became such an icon that several are now in television museums. These 15 shows created a shared cultural language that endures today. When someone says, "Nice to see you nice," we're instantly transported back. They achieved something modern television forgot, bringing families together for gentle competition where winning a teasmade meant everything. These programs understood that British audiences celebrate modest success and magnificent failure equally. Today's revivals fail because they can't recreate that innocent magic. Ordinary people, unpolished production, genuine joy over trivial prizes. If you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more forgotten television treasures. Remember, you don't get anything for a pair, but you get brilliant content for a subscription.